Hi everyone, William here with the Grand Duke Dmitri Diary Series 1917, I should add, and I'm breaking with my new schedule a little bit because I said that I would be doing 2 diary entries a week, and it's now a Friday, and the previous one was on Wednesday, and I had intended to do another one tomorrow on Saturday, having received the suggestion from AI that it's Saturday is a good day as opposed to Friday or Sunday to post a video. But I'm going to go ahead and do this on the Friday and let the chips fall where they may. All right, so our recap for the previous diary entry, which is 3rd October. Well, actually, I should say we're jumping forward to 11th October to one of Dmitri's long entries before he goes back and fills in the blanks, the day-to-day activity. This is more of a summary. But summary is the wrong word because summary would sort of be compressing things, and actually the long diary entries that he does every 10 days are the ones that are more expansive and fill in more details than the day-to-day ones. All right, so let's get to it. What do we have? Well, in that last diary entry of the 3rd October, Dmitri had been returning to an old pastime, stamp collecting, and he had gone to a dinner at the Imperial Club, or the Club de Imperial, and there he had played poker, and he'd done some dancing, and he'd had a good time. But I will quote from that diary entry of the 3rd, or actually we did 2 yesterday, the 2nd and the 3rd, and quote from the diary entry of the 2nd. He says, "There at the club they have a huge baccarat game. I need to try my luck there." Well, that was a bad idea, and that's going to be the topic of today's diary entry, or the first part of this long diary entry. So here we go. It's Wednesday, 11th October 1917, Tehran, English Mission. On the 6th of this week, I had a moral breakdown. To wit, I ended up at the Club Imperial and there lost 800 tumans at baccarat, chemin de fer. At the current exchange rate, that equals around 17,000 rubles. This sinful fall occurred unexpectedly. At first, I took 400 from Staroselsky, and in 1 minute was up about 300, having won back the amount I owed, plus more. But as always happens, I continued playing like a fool, and so blank, I got so into it that I could no longer leave the table because I had lost nearly 2,500. And that, by the current rate of exchange, is around 45,000 rubles, which is tiresome. I had to continue until the party was over, and that was around 10 o'clock of the following day. All this happened on Thursday, 5th October. I have to admit that my mood was foul. On top of everything else, it was pretty shameful to return to my host after avoir in French, and then blank, full stop. They were drinking their morning coffee in the garden and met me with a twinkle in the eye. Uh-oh, my dog is coughing. It's impossible to describe the moral hangover because I thought I had enough strength of will to stand up when necessary, but nothing of the sort. And now, of course, I can't stop thinking about gambling. Yes, the fact is I will have to try my luck because to remain 800 tumans in the hole is very tiresome. But things are getting worse. I owe those unfortunate 800 tumans exclusively to Staroselsky. He, of course, was full of courtesy and asked me not to hurry with the payment of the money and various similar courtesies and meaningless nonsense. Such are the customary words of the winner to the loser. Such words are probably worse than the loss itself. They rub it in all the more. Okay, we'll stop there, although there's more to say on this topic. So he uses some English, I wanted to point out. He uses some English expressions in this particular diary entry. He uses the Russian word for moral, nravsvenaya, but then the English word for breakdown, which he misspells as Brakedown. Then he uses the expression twinkle in the eye and then rub it in. I was a little surprised at rub it in. I would have thought that that was a more American and more modern, but clearly not. Okay, so chemin de fer is a kind of baccarat. It seems to have been Dmitri's favorite. And what he describes is really the classic picture, as I understand it, after doing some research, of a person suffering from what is now called gambling disorder, or compulsive gambling. You go to the table, you're on a high, you lose, and you feel like you're forced to win it back. You must win it back. You keep playing. The loss gets worse. Obviously, he did win some back because he was in the hole 2,500, and he finished apparently being 800 in the hole. So that's pretty good as far as he cut it more than in half. But on the other hand, this was a tremendous amount of money. So the 2,500, if you can believe it, in terms of purchasing power, would be between 150 and 180,000 in today's US dollar, with respect to what you could go out and buy. It's complicated. I definitely turned to AI for help. Complicated formula because of the ever-changing exchange rate, and the comparison to from Persian tumans to rubles to then US dollars and purchasing power. But anyway, you get the impression. This was a huge sum, and Dmitri, of course, could not afford it. He doesn't have the money to pay Staroselsky back. Staroselsky is a fellow officer. He's an active duty Russian officer serving as an instructor in the Persian Cossack division, and that makes it all the worse. The officer's code of honor says that you must pay back gambling debts. That is a debt of honor, not just a financial debt. Okay. Another thing that comes with the territory with gambling disorder is that it's very strongly associated with both alcohol abuse and with major depressive disorder. And I don't know if Dmitri suffered from either of those, but the probability is fairly high. And we'll find out later about how this was an ongoing problem and not just a problem now that he's in exile and doesn't have much money. But yeah, it's everything is now very much aggravated because of his financial situation. And it's interesting if you pay attention to his word choices. He uses the words sinful fall, he uses the word shameful, and this word that he uses of moral hangover, actually that's a translation because he uses the German for a hangover, Katzenjammer. So, it was something that he felt was moral, not just, oh no, I've lost money, but it's sinful, it's moral. And I think you can trace that back to the fact that Sergei and Ella were very religious people. And, it wasn't a secular family. And so it's interesting that he uses that particular terminology. The worst thing about it isn't the debt, it's how guilty he feels and how ashamed he is of it. Okay. Yeah, and in Dmitri's case, I would say that the worst incidents, at least in exile, of gambling losses and of being in the grip of this compulsion, usually came when he was stressed out by something, finding something difficult to handle. Obviously in this instance, having just the rug completely pulled out from under him because of Rasputin and then because of the revolution. So it's an interesting way that he describes what the reaction of the Marlings, that they met him with a twinkle in the eye. And usually that's a way of saying, yeah, you scamp, right? It's not serious. Like, oh, we know what you were doing. You were out having, a good time in some way or other. But he seems to feel that there was judgment in that. It was shameful to return to my host. They looked at me with a twinkle in the eye. So yeah, either he didn't know what the English expression really means, which is, sort of a jolly twinkle in the eye, or they really, they wouldn't have been looking at him with judgment because they didn't know what he was doing. Just, aha, look who's coming home at 10 o'clock in the morning. But, he's just feeling, he's feeling ashamed. And so how people look at him he's linking that to his shame. All right, who else in the imperial family was a compulsive gambler? Well, I only know of one. Maybe there only was one. Maybe with the others they were compulsive, but they didn't fall into financial difficulties because of it. But the one who did fall into great financial difficulties was Nikolai Nikolaevich the senior. Nikolai Nikolaevich the elder, I should say, the father of the Nikolai Nikolaevich who was commander-in-chief of the Russian forces until September 1915. He had great difficulty in his life because of compulsive gambling. So, as far as I know, there weren't any other members of the imperial family that had that issue. Probably the most famous Russian person who that we know of who suffered from compulsive gambling was Dostoevsky, the writer. He would get so far into gambling debts that on one occasion he had to hawk his wife's coat just to get enough money to play again and try and win some of it back. Anyway, yes, what do we have next time? Let's see. I hope you remember Staroselsky, right? Well, I already mentioned he's a military officer. So what do we have next time? Well, next time we have the topic of a bank loan, something Dmitri has never gotten before, but now it's necessary. And we will learn more about his history as a gambler. And yeah, so come back for that, and I hope to see you then. Bye.